NSFW. What is the most disrespectful thing someone did in your house? Left piss jugs in the closet. FCK Nathan. A girl I knew was keeping an eye on my cats and feeding the 2 fish while my girlfriend and I were on vacation. Before we left, we filled up the cat's large water bowl. It's the kind that has a reservoir, so we really only need to refill it about once a week, and we fully cleaned both of the fish tanks. When we got home, the cat's water bowl was completely dry and knocked over on the floor. Both fish tanks were filled with food. My better tank had a battery pack in it and he later died. She came in the door with another girl. They had been at our apartment pool while we were standing there in disbelief. Still gets me fired up every once in a while. I'm house sitting for friends, and my anxiety tells me, what if you FCK it up and they get mad? About 8/9 years ago, back at uni, I fell asleep before any of my mates. They proceeded to set up a webcam and broadcast me sleeping, inviting people they'd met at freshers from around the campus to comment bitch about me. Just f***ing weird, if nothing else. 6th grade, 1992ish. A friend of mine had to take a shitty and I guess there wasn't enough toilet paper left on the roll. He decided to wipe his ass on our bath towels and stuff it behind the sink. Never hung out with him again. My mom from then on would refer to him as TTY. Gave MDMA to our hamster during a party. She survived but we were pissed. My wife tended to a tomato plant. One single tomato plant. For weeks to get one bud. She cultivated it. Pruned it. Watered it. Everything. Just as it was getting to be picked. We had movers there and one ate it. Actually he ate half and threw away the second half. 20 years later. I'd still think that my wife will kill that man if she saw him today. Me and 2 of my bros were hanging out drinking at my house when I was around 18. I went to bed and they stayed up. When I got up the next day, my one friend told me to throw away one of my drumsticks. Found out a few days later that they blew each other and one of them shoved the drumstick up his ass. They both had girlfriends at the time. Friend of a friend of a friend stayed at my place and helped me build a fence over a few days. Then on the last night he took a bunch of acid and things took a weird turn. He cycled between threatening to attack me and trying to jerk off in front of me and my wife. Nice fence, but I would be hesitant to recommend them to a friend. A friend and his girlfriend came over for a few drinks and to just hang out. She went into the bathroom almost as soon as she got there and stayed in there for over an hour. I only had one bathroom at the time, so this was a big inconvenience for bunch of drinking dudes. When she finally came out, we found that she had scavenged all the loose change laying around and had been smoking what we later found out was crack. When I told my friend what happened, he was super embarrassed and left with her immediately. We later found some of her crack wrapped in a foil gum wrapper and tossed it. My friend said she had forgot something and threw a fit when he wouldn't bring her back to get it. How much loose change do you have in your bathroom? Stole my upstairs toilet. Pricks. Never having a party again. Years ago, a kid in school used to host parties all the time as his parents were always away on weekends. Was great. Being 16. Always having somewhere to go and get shit-faced until someone took a shitty in his kettle and we were never invited back. Apparently shitty, when boiled, creates loads of nasty shitty foam that escapes the kettle, takes over the kitchen and leaves a stink for weeks. Roommate's friend brought her dog over for the weekend while she stayed with us. She said it was her emotional support animal. Dog took a dump in my room and the friend refused to clean it up. Needless to say, informed my roommate she was not welcomed back. A friend was over with her husband and their 2 young children. They were here to meet my new baby. Their kids both were running and wrestling in the living room and they knocked my drink off of my end table all over and onto the magazines I had below it. I asked her if I could get her a towel and she says to me, they already know they're grounded when they get home. They don't clean up there either. I cleaned her own damn kid's mess in my own house. She wasn't kidding about them destroying their own house. Up high as they could reach was a band of crayon scribbles all along the rooms in every single room in that house. On his first visit, a friend of a friend came to my house. He is around 150 kilograms. Sits down in my extra gaming chair and pulls the pin so it tilts backwards. Grabs each handle and starts bouncing so it lifts off the carpet a few times. You could hear the chair nearing its limits. I ask him what he is doing. He looks at me and says, "Chill bro, I was just testing the springs." I told my friend not to take him over ever again. Some of you might think it was harsh, but I could feel he is like this with everything. Had sex on my bed. Didn't clean up. And left period blood all over my silk sheets. Have not invited them back to my home. Not exactly in my house. But close. Had a large fig tree in the backyard of my house. Rented the house out to a bunch of college girls one year while I house sat for my girlfriend's place. Her dad was a college offensive coordinator and ended up leaving for a job with a different school. And they couldn't unload the house just yet. They eventually sold their house. We moved back into my house. Which, amazingly enough, now did not have a fig tree in the backyard. Mothefkas uprooted and stole the fig tree. Mothefkas uprooted and stole the fig tree. I'm like 90% sure that both the Bible and the Quran explicitly forbid this exact crime. Dude would download bestiality videos of dudes f-king horses on my PC. That's got to be the weirdest one. A girl peed in my bong. One time I had a party. And a very drunk girl was upset she wasn't getting attention. In the middle of a room with like 15 people in it. She was wearing a skirt and starting peeing in my bong from above it. Like crouching above it and just straight up peeing in it. Didn't even budge or was phased. Everyone was in shock. Edit. I invited a good high school friend and my boyfriend at the time to Hanukkah dinner with my family. The boyfriend was fine. But the friend was acting like my parents were our age and started doing stupid shit like deep throating bananas and alluding to choking on a cock and throwing up. My parents kept politely asking him to tone it down but he wouldn't. Eventually my dad lost his shit and yelled "Stop it" and told him to get the FCK out. I have never cringed harder in my entire life. Had a friend visit from out of town to celebrate my birthday. They invited a buddy over first night though without even asking me first. Proceeded to scratch up my granite countertops with a razor blade while cutting and snorting lines of cocaine all evening while completely ignoring my presence. Then asked if it would be okay for buddy to take my spot on chartered fishing trip the next day, which I had paid for in advance. Told him as long as I got paid back I didn't give her FCK. Charged them double what it actually cost. And dropped them at the marina. While they were out fishing I used the extra money I charged them to rent him a hotel room across the street from the marina. Moved all his shit to the hotel room. Left the key at the front desk. And bounced. Once done fishing they called asking for a ride. I explained they were now staying at the hotel right across the street. Told them they could FCK off right out of my life. Hung up and promptly blocked their number. Haven't spoken to them since. Obligatory not me but my best friend. Had another friend come over and hang out for a while. Guy goes to the bathroom and comes out a while later and said he needed to go home. About an hour later my buddy goes to that bathroom and finds the shower curtain covered in shit. He had apparently ran out of TP and decided the curtain was a good backup. That guy never answered any calls or texts and ghosted my buddy. Interesting fella. A friend of mine told me this story. A guy he invited into his house. I guess a friend. Was laughing at him for taking care of his grandma. And because he couldn't afford a nursing home for her. FCK that dude and my homies hate him too. Who laughs at someone for compassion and that sort of sacrifice? My parents host a big 4th of July party every year. Couple hundred people usually attend, except this year of course. Last year, my mom spots a young looking girl asking for drinks and vape hits from randoms. She had been lying inconsistently about her age. And was sloppy drunk. We tried to find out who she was and where she came from for a while. Until eventually figuring out she was a distant relative that had been adopted by her grandmother, my great aunt, from her parents. Don't know the exact details. I assume her birth parents weren't great. When we confronted her guardian with her behavior, her attitude was, and so? We had to pester them for half an hour and physically escort them back to their car to make them leave. The girl who had variously said she was 18, 20, 22, and other ages actually turned out to be 12. My mom always loved to tell the story of the time my dad's brother spilled a pop on the coffee table and wiped it up with a throw pillow. An internet installer did not ask if he could use my restroom and left a huge turd in the toilet. Came over uninvited. Sat on my couch leaving me no room to sit and stayed on their phones for 5 hours without a single word to me. Tried to talk to them. They never responded. I had a really f-king TTY night at work, also endless harassments from customers and my boss. I got home around midnight to find my buddy, who was illegally crashing with me after getting evicted from his place, had invited his friends over to drink. Normally that would have been fine, but the girl he liked drank all my liquor that I saved specifically for after rough nights at work. Not only that, but she blocked my housemates in the driveway. Something he stressed to us to never do cause he worked on call at the ER. Banged someone in the ass in my shower and left a used condom and gum on the radiator. Friend of my roommate got blackout drunk. Puked all over the furniture. Got naked then tea on the bathroom floor. Reading these comments makes me realize how tame my life is and how respectful my friends are. Worst thing. Somebody didn't take their shoes off. They apologized and rectified the issue. Edit. What the hell did I wake up to? Edit. I am not Canadian, Polish or Japanese, or even Asian in general. I did pick up this habit while in Japan. It makes sense. Keep the outside out and the inside in. Saves my hardwood floors as well. Additionally, I do have slippers available and shoe covers if need be. One person gets an exception. My very old grandmother. Because my respect for her goes beyond any sort of rule I have. My parents or anyone else are not exempt. When we have workers over, we place down coverings to walk on. My youngest are MF twins. Then they were almost 15. I took my wife and daughter to a volleyball tournament out of town. While we were gone, my son's friend let himself in the house uninvited, learned the door code by watching, and FK'd his girlfriend in my daughter's bed. Left the used condoms, too, on the nightstand. Walked in the front door with a lit cigarette. I didn't notice for like 5 minutes until it started really smoking. I had a friend come over and I told her my life was sucking because I had had a miscarriage, then a couple months later found out my sister had breast cancer. Her response? Well, you'd better hurry up and get pregnant again because pregnancy prevents breast cancer. I had a healthy son a year and a half later, but my sister ended up passing away. We are no longer friends. Close bracket. Eater. Changed, had a healthy son to Javier 12 now. My sister passed away in 2014. Thank you to everyone for your kind words. My ex's best friend blew cigarette smoke directly into my 7-year-old cockatiel's face. He thought that I couldn't see or hear him laughing about it with my ex. I tore that man a new asshole. I'm normally a very soft-spoken, very polite person, but that was enough to push me over the edge. Told him that if I caught him doing it again, or really anything to that bird, I'd kick his ass and then throw him over the balcony of our apartment. That man, who is twice my size, looked like he was about to start crying. Birds have a very, very fragile respiratory system. You aren't even supposed to burn candles in the same room as them. Cigarette smoke being blown directly in their face can kill them, and my little guy was very lucky that he didn't even get sick from it. The most messed up part of it, though, was that my ex yelled at me for screaming at his best friend. Honestly, I spent like $30 on food for myself, Sounds like a lot, but it was just a really good local pizza and mozzarella sticks. I went to the bathroom and came out and nearly all my food was eaten by everyone else in the house. I was f***ing furious. I kicked everyone who didn't live there out and then took my extra TV I had put in the living room back in my room and told my roommates they better replace the food their mutual friends ate or I'd start taking away more things that were mine and put in my month's notice to the landlord. They couldn't afford to live there without me. Within 45 minutes I had my food. Sounds like an overreaction, but they were the shittiest roommates and I had put up with a lot by that point. I still ended up putting my 1 month in. My brother-in-law and his friend came to stay at our flat in London, which was about 150 miles from where they lived. His friend really didn't like dogs. No problem. I said if keep the dog away from him as much as I could. But be aware. It's my flat. My dog. My rules. They'd not been in the flat for more than 20 minutes or so and I was in the kitchen making some tea and I heard him say "So go away. FCK off. Go on. Go away." From the living room. I was on my way to get the dog and bring him into the kitchen with me and I heard a thud and my dog yelped and ran past me. The FK had kicked my dog. I completely lost it and saw red. I grabbed him by the front of his shirt. Dragged him to the front door and threw him out. I grabbed his bag. Threw that past him and told him he'd better be out of my sight in 10 seconds or I'd kick the shit out of him. I never saw him again. Had a roommate change the oil in his car in the garage, my house. 4 other roommates, and then dispose of it by hiding it behind the recycling bin, where it leaked all over the garage floor. After having to force him to clean it up and tell him to dispose of it properly. I should have known his second attempt would be no better. As a week later I found the bucket of oil behind the pool heater in the backyard while mowing. Ate all of my Girl Scout cookies. But wait. That's not all. He also drank all the milk because the cookies made him thirsty. Took a shitty on the floor and then barked at me. My cousin punched my wall. Left a hole and started laughing. When he got his first house I went over and punched a hole right in the wall. I waited for 11 years to do that. I made tacos for my 2 roommates. My ex-best friend. And myself. Well, as the cook, I always make my plate last. My ex-best friend Brandon went first and got his 2 taco shells and took all of the ground beef. Like all of it. For 2 tacos. An entire pound of beef for 2 tacos. Then he piled on half the bag of cheese onto those tacos and started eating them before anyone else even got to the kitchen. If he had been an asshole on purpose as a joke I wouldn't have been as mad. But he legit was just being a selfish FCK. Didn't even care. Not autistic and totally knew better. Just didn't care. This is not the reason we are no longer friends. But it's this kind of behavior. This hoe threw an entire roll of toilet paper into the toilet. Who TF does that? My son was 5 weeks premature and when he was 3 weeks old, fresh out of the NICU, my friends wanted to come over to meet him. When they came they brought along their friend who I had never met before and didn't even introduce him to me. They also brought food. Usually when people bring food to a family with a newborn they leave it for the family to eat. Not my friends. They made me throw an impromptu dinner party and left all the dishes. They also stayed for over 4 hours and I had to remind them multiple times to quiet down because they kept getting rowdy and I had a 3-week-old premature baby. My mom and dad let my little brother's friend stay in their basements for a while because he was down on his luck. The guy threw huge parties when my parents were gone. Did all manner of drugs all over their property. And went through all their stuff when they were working. So my parents finally told him he had to go and then that night I texted my mom threatening and insulting her. And threatening my dad and the family dog. He reminded them he knows where they all sleep. I don't live there anymore. But if I did I would probably have had more than a discussion with him. You don't pull that shit with anyone. Especially with someone who took you in when your own family wouldn't.